I'm Alexis Neichenbalker. I'm the Assistant Director for Quality and Special Initiatives at the CSU Chancellor's Office. Last year at this conference, we had announced a joint UC-CSU Lean Process Improvement 2-day workshop, and I ended up sending out a survey to see if there was any interest. I think we had over 200 responses. And so over the last year, we ended up doing 8 workshops, including a few Wakubo-sponsored events, and we had 361 attendees, 22 CSU campuses represented, and 9 UC campuses represented. So that was a great success, and we're going to plan to do more this year. All right, so I'm here to introduce Dr. Eric Olsen on his Lean Process Improvement presentation. Dr. Olsen is going to describe the lean thinking approach to process improvement. He'll share his experience with improvement efforts at Cal Poly and provide insights on how changing one's thinking can open the door to finding better ways to get better. Dr. Olsen serves as Area Chair and Professor of Industrial and Packaging Technology in the Orfalea College of Business at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. He teaches undergraduate and master's courses in Lean Thinking, Six Sigma, and Operations Management. He has over 20 years of industry experience in engineering manufacturing management before getting his PhD at the Ohio State University. The Ohio State University. He's published, consulted, trained in lean performance improvement, strategy deployment, and Six Sigma, as well as run numerous improvement events at Cal Poly and in the local community. Dr. Olsen is a director for Central Coast Lean, a self-funded research project under the Orfalea College of Business. Its mission is to better understand how to build a community of lean practice. It promotes, runs, and studies improvement events, forums, workshops, and conferences. Dr. Olsen is also the creator and instructor for Cal Poly's Lean Six Sigma Green and Black Belt certification program. I've been able to attend, I believe, 3 of your Central Coast Lean Summits, and everyone has been really great. I think they're in February every year.
Right.
Is that correct? And if you get a chance, it's well worth your time if you want to learn about what others are doing in not only higher ed, but healthcare and other manufacturing areas.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Why don't you go ahead and take it? I think I got this other mic thing going here. Well, thank you, Alexis. When I was asked to be here today, I was both excited and a bit apprehensive. I was excited because this was an opportunity to talk to 100 or so people that could maybe really make a difference in making higher education better. I'm a bit of a selfish improver. I like to improve the organizations that I work in, and when I do things like workshops and Kaizen events and continuous improvement things, hopefully a little bit of it washes back on me so that the things that I do get a little bit better. And when you guys get better, the other thing that I benefit from you guys getting better is, you create some of these good examples that maybe I can follow and I can learn from and maybe emulate, and maybe Cal Poly can emulate. And here's your first little lean thinking lesson, but it also works the other way. If you guys really screw up, right, that's a nice sort of example also. I say, well, don't do that, okay? So all you guys got to do is go out there and try some things and learn, and hopefully we'll all get better together. Let's see. So as I said, I'm a lean guy, and thinking about what I should do in this situation, I was a little bit apprehensive when Mike Redmond and Alexis came and said, well, could you do this thing for us, be the lean guy, talk at this conference? They said, well, and what we want is a TED Talk quality type presentation. And I'm thinking, geez, I'm not a TED Talk guy. My expertise sort of runs a little bit more towards the facilitation, getting other people to talk and listen to them, and maybe a little bit of capture the truth, but I wasn't really a good TED talker. So I thought, well, how am I going to deal with that? Well, I said, I'm going to take a little bit of my own medicine. I'm going to think, well, what's the kind of value that I'm going to try to deliver to this audience? And I said, well, the value is that I'm going to try to get you thinking in a direction, maybe we can call it lean for now, but a direction about trying to get better and an improvement. And by talking to you about that, maybe it also helps Cal Poly and some of the things that I'm trying to do. I should have some sort of process to go ahead and do that. Well, I thought, well, maybe for a process is I should talk about a little bit why it's important, that change management thing that we've been hearing about. I should provide you with some easy, useful definition of lean that you can take back to your organizations. I should give you some examples of some of the things that we're doing at Cal Poly, some approaches that we've tried and you can maybe learn from. And then ultimately, try to give you some easy things that you can engage in and share. And really, at the end, I'm going to wrap up with some ways you can think about lean, start having maybe some conversations, and some easy ways to talk about lean in your organizations that aren't quite so as threatening as some of the Japanese words and things that we lean people tend to bandy about pretty easily. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get going. So this is a little view of my world, okay? So this is my reality, my current state, my home base. This is Cal Poly. And one of the things we try to do from a lean perspective is we try to recognize the truth of the situation. What is the reality that we're dealing with? Now I know that, I'm pretty sure that your world is a lot like my world, right? It's a little different location, but it's probably pretty much the same. And I know that there's sort of a running joke in continuous improvement circles, facilitators and people that do this kind of thing, is whenever we go into an organization, they'll say, oh, that might have worked in the auto industry, or that's okay for hospitals, but hey, we're different. We're not like that. Well, I'll grant you, you're all different and you're all special. Okay, you're all special. But fundamentally, the underlying thing that works with lean, and the reason why lean works so well is it goes for that underlying thing, which is processes. We all deal with processes, and it doesn't matter whether you're building a car or you're cashing a check or whatever. It's all about processes, and that's where lean sort of tries to attack the problem. And ultimately, we're all about trying to find out, well, what's the root cause of the issue? What's the root cause that we're trying to fix and identify? So our current state, so here's current state at Cal Poly, as good as we are, as proud as we are of our institution, bone-crushing bureaucracy. I just took over as a new area chair for industrial and packaging technology, and I'm trying to figure out my job. How many people, when they first got on their job, were thoroughly trained? Just go ahead and, I'm still waiting for my training, right? So I talked to some other area chairs and some other people at the college, and they said, well, after 3 years, you figure out what your job is, right? So far, my initial impression on my job is I respond to emails and I sign things, right? And I'm just going to put that in my job description. I read emails, I respond, and I sign things. But the idea here of bureaucracy, do we have a system that helps you do your job, right? Does the system help you do your job, or is it standing in your way, right? If we just didn't have all this stuff, could I get what I need to do, can I really sort of get it done? And I guess I'd ask the question is, what does a helpful system look like? Right? Our systems ought to help us, right? So how many people out there have a helpful system? Okay, so you're going to give me a business card, you're going to give me a business card, you're going to give me a business. They're rare. They're rare. And I think that's something what we can aspire to. So what I'd like to do is maybe try to eliminate some of that bone-crushing bureaucracy by working on it from a lean perspective. The other thing that we deal with, and I think this is also sort of a common problem, a culture of no, right? So the default reaction to any idea or change is no. Now that's That's not the way it's going to happen. I dealt a lot. I was in industry for 20 years before going into academia to get my PhD, and I've been at Cal Poly for about 11 years now. But one of my experiences I remember at Hewlett Packard, I was there for 11 years dealing with this group of people called engineers. And so these were people that were trained to find things wrong with anything you said. They took it as a personal mission. It was their job to figure out what was wrong with things. And I said, wow, once I got into academia and started working at Cal Poly, those guys had nothing on the people that I'm dealing with now, right? There are people that are trained beyond that engineering expertise and finding out, ooh, I know what this is wrong with this thing. So here's a test you might do. Somebody walks into, and think about your organization, somebody walks into the office and says, hey, I just thought of a great idea to save the university 12 minutes on processing every student registration that we have in the university. Is the first reaction, well, let me tell you why that isn't gonna work, okay? It's culture and no. If the answer is something more like, hey, great idea, let me help you figure out how to make that work, okay, that's more of a culture of yes. And so, it's probably never, that sort of extreme case that we talk about. It's somewhere more in the middle, but let's move it more to that culture of yes type approach. So here's a little spoiler alert, all right? Help is not on the way, all right? They're not going to be sending great gobs of people or money or resources to help you do your job or to make that stuff work out. So maybe we should, start trying to figure it out. People are retiring, leaving our organization. We're not replacing them as they sort of come back on. We're being asked to do more, and maybe a lot of it is bureaucracy. And we need to figure out how to cut some of that stuff back and actually try to get better results with, maybe even less people. And, one of the arguments we could use is that there's this sort of ever-increasing pie, this ever-increasing value that we're being asked to deliver to our students, the people of California and whatnot. I could say that, one of the first continuous improvements events we did, and when we first started this stuff in 2009, it was during the furlough period, right? And everybody was, 10% sort of cut back. And, people were concerned about their jobs and things. They were concerned about their jobs, but they also wanted to do their jobs. They wanted to do good jobs. They wanted to, get the work done at the end of the day. They didn't want to, walk out of the office, after, they put in their 90% or whatnot and leave all that stuff done. There's people banging on the door and, certainly some angry professors and different people that wanted their stuff done. So, you sell it to them on the fact that, hey, job security is not an issue in this type of environment, right? Just think about, we need to be able to do more with these things. And so we need to get more efficient to be able to do that. So that's sort of the, why is this important piece of it. Now I want to talk a little bit about sort of what I think is a relatively straightforward and simple definition or way of thinking. And so we talk about this about as lean thinking. You might, in your organizations, I kind of like a different term. Lean was sort of an unfortunate selection artifact of history on what this is termed. I like the term operations excellence, if you want to go ahead and use that going forward. But you can turn this definition to three simple questions, okay? You can say, what is the value? What is the value? Now, in lean, we look at value in a very special way. We say that value is in the eyes of the final customer. And so we also might think of it in terms of, maybe three different factors. We might talk about it. I know Dr. Massey this morning was talking about, the cost and the quality issue, and those certainly are big. But and this is, I'm probably on thin ice here talking to a bunch of people well-versed in finance and money and whatnot, but I don't necessarily feel the need to sort of go all the way to that when I'm saying what's the cost in terms of value. I can just say, well, what's the hassle factor, right? How much resources does it cost me to deal with you on a regular basis, right? How many people, how many times do I have to read this contract? Whatever it is, what's the hassle factor? And that's the cost, that's the value, part of the value in the eyes of the customer. The other thing would be the quality portion, right? Yeah, in product manufacturing, we can look directly at sort of defects or nicks or scratches or cars that don't start up the first time. But a quality factor in the transactional world that we all deal with might be percent complete and error-free. How many times you get a form through the process, all the way through from step number 1 to step 123, that's complete and error-free. It's a quality measure. And then the other thing that Dr. Massey kind of missed that our lean folks are really key on is the whole issue of time, right? What's the time element of this whole thing? Because people are measuring us on, well, how long does that really sort of take to do that? From the time I start this thing into the process, I insert the form, to the time that it comes out the other side completed. How much is that time? So that's the idea of value. And then the next question is, okay, I know what the value is. I know what I'm trying to deliver to my customer. Next question is, well, what's the process? What are the different steps that it goes through? What are the things that transaction is going to see as it goes through? So if I was the transaction, if I was that piece of paper and I looked up, right, what would I see? Would I see some space? Would I look to either side of me and say, hey, I'm in an inbox, right? Or I look up and I see somebody, smiling face, scribbling on me. What's happening to me? What's the process that I'm going through? And then finally, the third question that I would ask, all right, and this is key to making sure that it's really lean, is the idea is, are we involving the people doing the work in problem solving? Okay. And this is kind of a subtle thing because there's a lot of people that will use lean, I think, sort of incorrectly and say, hey, we're lean. We used to have 10 people, now we only got 2. We're lean. That is not lean, right? That's what was one of the terms was cheap. I don't know, was the, what that is. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that the people are involved in problem solving. So if I had a perfect system that this helpful system, I just plopped it down, right here, it came from aliens in space or something. We had this most perfect system. If it didn't include the fact that the people operating and running that system knew how to do it and knew how to solve problems around that system, and that system could get better, it's not stagnant, it's not frozen, as perfect as it was when it dropped from the sky, then in my book, it's not really lean. So it's really people focused. It's about people doing the work, being involved in problem solving. So, one of the really sort of neat quotes Edwards Deming, put down is, that change, let's see, what is it? Change is not necessary, right? Change is not necessary. Survival is not mandatory, right? So as we go through and evaluate these things that we're going to do using this sort of process, can we get changes that really, make a difference, add value for the customers, and are efficient? So let's talk a little bit about the relationship between these 3 elements of the definition real quick, just so we get grounded here. So this is the relationship between value and process. So I've got down here in the lower left-hand corner to you, right? Lower left-hand corner, traditional operations or traditional processing or our traditional organizations. And what I might say is, well, I'm going to go on an improvement path. And one way I might do it is I might say, hey, you know what? I got to improve my processes. I got to fix the process steps. And I could head in this direction, right? And this direction says, well, without really sort of understanding the value that I'm trying to deliver, I wind up just, effectively delivering the wrong product, right? Maybe I need to recalibrate what's going on. The other path that I might take is I might, develop some sort of really good understanding of what the value is. I'm doing my market research. I'm talking to my customers. I really sort of understand the value. But if I don't get that process efficiency up, that leanness in my process, then I'm not really going to be sustainable. I just really can't give it, keep on going. I'm going to wind up just giving away the store, if you will. So where I want to be is I want to be sort of on that truly lean trajectory, right? I want to really understand the value, and I want to improve the process. When we do improvement events at Cal Poly, we've now done about 21 events. And I can say from a categorical standpoint, they tend to follow that 80-20 rule. And the 80-20 rule, the way that sort of works in this particular case, it's either 80% about figuring out what the value is and only 20% about fixing the process, or it's reversed around. It's like 20% value, 80% is on fixing the process. So for example, when we we're looking at the strategic planning review process and assessment for our individual areas and departments in the university. So all the academic areas need to go every 5 years through a review process. We spent a lot of that Kaizen event just trying to understand, why the heck are we doing this? Right? What are we trying to achieve when we're doing this process? So a lot of discussion about just understanding what the value is. And we did a little flow charting and kind of got some basic sort of ideas on, but it was a real breakthrough just understanding why these things were important and what we were doing. The reverse of that, we did another Kaizen event on the check cashing process at Cal Poly. So this is the process where somebody writes, hey, Professor Olsen, I love what you're doing in that machine shop. I want you to have, a brand new end mill. Here's a check for $30,000. Here you go. And how long does that take that check to get into some, fund or someplace, where ultimately I can actually access it and get that end mill, right? And by the way, at the same time, this great donor that gave me that $30,000 is constantly checking his bank account, saying, did the check clear? Did the check clear? Did the check clear, right? So that was something else. We knew what the value was, that was pretty straightforward. It was all the way that fixing up the process. So, the big sort of message here in this part of it is, don't take I know what the value is for granted. You got to spend some time and figure that out before you go forward. Okay, let's see, what else I want to say about this? Yeah, and customers are the ones that determine the value. I always want to look for an external customer. I think, in for-profit businesses, the person that are buying your product or buying your service, it's pretty obvious that they're a customer. We struggle with that in higher education. Like, who's the customer? Is it the students? Is it the professors? Who are the customers? The basic rule here is to look for somebody outside your organization to be the customer, right? And that says, okay, my boss is inside my organization. I can't be my boss as my customer, right? Accounting is within my organization. Accounting can't be the customer, right? I'm looking for somebody outside, somebody that I'm providing, an outside service to. And then all those other players, all those other actors inside the system, those people become your partners, right? We're teaming up, right? We're teaming up and we're going to make this external customer happen. We're going to serve the students, or we're going to serve, the people of California by providing, industry-ready students ready to hit the ground running or whatever. So that's sort of a big issue within this sort of lean thinking process, is sort of understanding this idea of customer. I've done a few Kaizen events where we've had professors in Kaizen events. It's a real challenge, right? I have a lot better luck, working with folks in your field and administrative areas as far as improvement goes. Professors want to be customers. It doesn't matter. Well, I got to be the customer. It's about sort of making me happy. But if they're inside the system, you get this, kind of an ugly little effect where you're determining, self-determining what's value, and a lot of times it just doesn't work out. So watch out for that going forward. So that's the two parts of the definition. The third part of the definition is involving people in problem solving. This is actually a picture from a Kaizen event we did with our employee intake process. And I don't know about your institutions, but we hire a lot of adjunct faculty and temporary staff to sort of fulfill at the beginning of the quarter. And these people are showing up, banging on the door. And we had a process where for intake, they had to do, and forgive me for not knowing the specifics about it. Turns out it's not real important as a facilitator of these sort of things, because I had the experts in the room who knew about the process. But they had to do this all in the same day, right? So they had to have their I-9 signed by the end of the day and all that. But we would take 25 minutes per employee. We'd have to go over 23 different documents with each employee. And it was just amazing. One of the things we did for the Kaizen event is we said we took the wall, and it's about being very visual, is we put all these different documents up on the wall in a row so we could start pointing to, okay, that one, that one, that one. And it was a very sort of colorful display. I don't think we have it quite in this picture, but eventually, through sort of talking it out, we got it down to 9 and then 6. And then we've got a future plan to get it down to just sort of 2 documents to get through. Everything else, we eliminated, I think about 11 of the documents, put them up for reference only on a website, and everything else is sort of online. So not only do we get that sort of cost and that hassle of filling out all those forms put away, but also we round up with employees who are better prepared. Because if you're thinking about the employee as the customer in this part, you're trying to deliver them this information, and they're not keeping track of that. And here's what happens when you retire. Here's this 23-year-old who's just sort of coming on board. They don't care, but we were showing them those sorts of documents and things, and what was the value for them? They had more value saying, and if you want to know about this, go look at this website over here, and you can figure that out. So getting people involved in problem solving, one of the ways that this really was brought home to me is, doing some work at Hewlett-Packard. I would go around to different organizations around the world and talk about these sorts of things and run workshops. And you'd walk into this big facility in Singapore, a wafer fab or assembly area, and you'd see all these people standing there in these white coats, looking at microscopes, doing these little small assembly operations. And it never ceased to impress me that it was sort of a there but for the grace of God go I. The only difference between me and any of those people at any of those workstations was a difference in circumstance, maybe a difference in opportunity. There could have been some PhDs in that crowd. There could be some people that had the potential to be rocket scientists. Right? And that's all going to waste if we don't engage, not only their, hands and their backs, but also trying to engage their mind. And that's where we try to engage the people in problem solving. This is actually, so the things you see in these things, it's a really transformative experience of getting those people involved. It's not listen to the managers doing PowerPoint presentations about how great they are or the things they did. But when you look at the impact on the people in the organization. So this is Jenna. She's sitting there talking about this. She's a person in payroll, and seemed to me when I first met her the most quiet kind of person in the world. But all of a sudden you start talking about her work and the things that she could do and her ideas, and boy, things just lit up, right? So there's your rocket scientists. Right? And say, okay, you've been doing the work, help us improve these things. So involving people in problem solving, a critical element in Lean. So I want to talk a little bit about our Lean journey at Cal Poly. So I said we're trying to go from traditional operations to truly Lean. I'm going to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. We're somewhere in between. Right? We're certainly not there. Some of your organizations, might certainly be further along, and I'd love to sort of hear your stories and have you sort of share back. We've got organizations, also sort of back in traditional land like this, right? We've got organizations still back in the 1950s. I'd just like to get them to the 1970s. I'd be happy, right? And we've got some people that are playing some sort of different game, right? So when you see this sort of thing, this is the islands of improvement, right? We're not there as a total entity yet, all moving down the same sort of path. but we got some good things going. We got some things that I think we can leverage. So I want to show a little video. So that was a little sort of video of Cal Poly. That's our lean journey. So just sort of a little bit of a side, I'm a little bit of a lean movie maker. And if you want to sort of do this thing, you just get your Apple iMovie, you use the movie trailer app on that. You take little 5 and 20-second clips, you just dump them in there. It kind of doesn't matter, how you do. I'm sure the movie that you guys are making for this conference is going to be so much more professional and better, but I bet you couldn't match the 30 minutes it took me to do that, right? Because you're already in man hours way over that as far as that goes. So that's a little bit of a lean movie making. So this is our lean journey. So this is sort of a little bit of the kickoff, and in every sort of change management exercise, you remember this sort of defining moment. This is Bob Koob. He was the interim provost in 2009, and I remember getting a call from Bob, and he said, Eric, I saw that you were doing some, lean stuff. He had sort of heard about some of this stuff. I think when he was in Iowa, he had visited Pella Window, which was sort of a big sort of lean advocate organization, and he said, so why does it seem like the whole quality movement of the 80s and 90s had somehow bypassed San Luis Obispo, right? And then the other thing he says, some of our processes are just silly, right? Just silly, right? So he recognized this need, and he was looking for some way to make things happen. And we were sort of lucky enough to connect up. I told him about some of the things I'd done for improvement events and workshops and things at Hewlett-Packard. And we said, well, we can do some things like that at Cal Poly. And it's really just about, I think in a lot of ways, just getting people together in the same room who don't normally talk about something and giving them some tools to focus on and talk about problems. So one sort of piece of advice is to start easy on your Kaizen events. So for starting easy, we used what I call the smart leader approach. So we didn't have, it wasn't connected to our master plan or our strategic plan as to what places we ought to do Kaizen events. We just had Bob, who's a pretty smart and knowledgeable guy, and he would look for opportunities, right? Or pain points for the university that he was aware of that we can maybe potentially go out and fix. Now there's another criteria. You didn't only have to look for the pain point, but you also had to look for that sort of coalition of the willing. Right? These people had to want to improve. So what's that, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb?
One has to want to change.
Yeah, just one, but he really has to want to change, right? So we looked for some people that really wanted to change and wanted to improve. And so we started out the other sort of point of pain, like we were talking 2009, we're saying, wow, we need some more revenue streams. We ought to be better at this sort of grant process and getting that money funnel running. So we started out with the grant development process. We had, so you can sort of see we're doing some flow charting up on the wall. So this process, we broke it down. We thought it had about 63 steps, and only 7 of those steps were really value added, right? So value added in terms of that final customer, only 7 of those 63 steps that it went through. And so that's sort of a wake-up call, and when you can see that up on the wall and everybody's sort of looking at the same thing, you can really sort of get some buy-in. We figured it took somewhere between 45 and 140 days for a grant to go through our process. So there was the opportunity. I gotta say, this was our first event, and we learned some important lessons from going through this event. One of the lessons was, follow-up support is real important. After the event, I'll share with you sort of the other one. So follow-up support is important. We also decided that we needed to involve multiple levels of management or employees in each one of our events. Because pretty much we had for this grants development process, it was a big sort of, okay, everybody on board and whatnot. And we wound up with this sort of sign up of all these middle managers, right, within our organization. So upper and middle managers were all sort of in there. So these are all pretty important and sharp people. But after we walked out of the event, we wound up sort of turning it over to the people on the ground, those people really involved in the work. And we said, okay, form teams. Here's a list of things that we've identified that you should fix. And those teams, to be kind, would say that they kind of imploded, right? They didn't have team training. Two bad things that they had going against them. They didn't have team training, and they really weren't involved with, identifying the problems and the issues in the first place, right? So we didn't get that engagement piece. It's okay, we learned our lesson, sort of never again. The nice thing about this, we laid some groundwork, and actually 5 years later, we tried to turn the crank a second time. So we put the grants development process through a second time. This time it was facilitated by somebody else in our information technology services area, and certainly going to be more successful this second time around because we've learned our lesson. So that's start easy, be easy on yourself. I would also go for participation, right? So that's an idea. This is our staff recruiting process. We actually have done 4 different hiring process Kaizen events. It seems to be a real hot spot for things that need to be improved. Lots of bureaucracy there that needs to be addressed. So we've done 3 at Cal Poly. We actually did 1 at Hancock College down in Santa Maria. So we get that sort of participation. We've now had about 300 people at Cal Poly, just Cal Poly employees alone, sort of involved in different Kaizen and training events. We collaborate a little bit with our buddies at Cal State Channel Islands. They've trained had people in about 332 people in different sorts of training events there. So go for participation. I think one of the big things for the participation aspect, and we alluded to it just a second ago, is there's sort of a lean mantra that says, we see together, we know together, we act together, right? See, know, act. So we see together, we know together, we act together. So if you don't have the people in the room doing the analysis, we don't all see the same analysis and sort of understand and all nod our heads to each other, it's real hard to get that acting piece, and the acting piece is what you ultimately want, right? We kind of got a unique opportunity. We can leverage faculty and students, right? We got people that would benefit from knowing, or would benefit from learning this, the students. We got people that know how to do it. There's faculty like myself around there that can do this sort of thing. This is actually a Kaizen event we just sort of finished up. This was the Nutcracker Kaizen, right? Because we actually had a call from the Performing Arts Center, and they were saying, okay, we got to do a lot of things to put on these different events, different shows come through San Luis Obispo. We said, well, give us, what's your high runner? What do you do sort of the most of? We can use that as an example. And it turns out they do the Nutcracker every year. It was something that we do a lot of it internally, as opposed to, a Broadway show blows in going from LA to San Francisco and does a little 2-night stay or something. It was a good example to sort of run through. So we did that, leveraged faculty and students. These are 2 students here. So the one on the left is Glenn, and the one on the right is Rebecca. Glenn's in one of my Greenbelt classes that I'm teaching this summer. So he's doing this Lean Six Sigma Greenbelt. So he's using this Kaizen event as his project. And Rebecca's in my Black Belt class, and she's also going to be using the same event in order to do her project for that particular class. So, yeah. So one thing on the Performing Arts Center, so we talked about the no culture and the yes culture, and so Cal Poly is more on the side of the no culture. When I went into this organization, it was interesting. So this is at Cal Poly, the Performing Arts Center, but they're more of a yes culture. But it gets them into a lot of trouble in that, when they've got some creative artist or director saying, I want fairies to swing from the ceiling, at exactly this point in the performance, they say, yeah, we're on it, right? And that's why we need to have a crew of 8 people standing by any second to do this sort of thing. Otherwise, they've got this sort of wasteful, they're just waiting, right? And it's not always that they have got more resources than they need. A lot of times because they're saying yes, they got less resources than they need. So if they've only got 3 people there on a particular day, then they're there till 3 or 4 in the morning, and people are getting burnt out, and they got another show the next day, and it just, how do you level that load, and how do you sort of understand that? And we worked on trying to figure out ways to sort of address that problem for them. And a lot of it came down to, yeah, you've anecdotally got a problem, but let's start trying to figure out how to measure it, how to analyze it. And that's something we put them on a sort of a lean measurement diet. The other thing we try to do is play with others. I don't know how many of you have done these improvement events, but have you gone out and invited other people to your improvement events? We go for outside participation. We've had people from our county government come in. They've come in and been in our Kaizen events. We've gone over and been in their Kaizen events. We got people from local industry that are also trying to be lean. They say, hey, we're doing this, check cashing process. Could you send somebody over from your finance department to sort of sit in our Kaizen event? And so they take, 12 hours off of their job. We do our Kaizen events in like 3-4 hour sessions over like 2 or 3 weeks. And, people are coming. We had one event for, we're looking at the special events process at Cal Poly, and we had one person drive down from the Asilomar Conference Center up near Monterey, drove down 3 hours for a 4-hour event, just to sort of see what was going on, and we picked his brain and he sort of helped out. So, keeping your problems hidden, and I'm just gonna keep this a secret until everybody's got these problems. Everybody knows that these things are difficult, so getting other people involved. Get other departments involved, right? So we asked people from other places in the university, so just because we're working on an HR problem, we'll invite people from our finance or an advancement group that might also help. So go for that playing with others type aspect. Certainly, my email address is available, and if you guys want to come down and participate in a Kaizen event in Cal Poly, sort of check out the waters, before you go back. We're going to learn as much from you as you're going to learn from us, probably a little bit more, all right? So play with others. We're at the point in our lean journey now, we're starting to go back and add some more structure. Probably the structure we started out with, and this is when I got the call from Bob Koob, I said, well, it's just a good idea to get, folks that are working on lean within the local community, let's just get together and talk. Like, 5 or 6 companies from around the Central Coast, we get together every other month for a couple hours, just talk about what's going on in their lean programs, what are they doing? Maybe we pick a topic to focus on. Total productive maintenance or visual management was one we just did. I just did that on Tuesday. I'm starting to lose my time bearing here. So that was sort of the informal sort of structure that we started out with. We've sort of added some things, like Alexa said, so now we've got the Central Coast Lean, which does regular forums. We do an annual summit. We do workshops and things like that. This is actually a picture of Teresa May from our information technology services. So we had some good experiences with trying to combine Kaizen events with computerization, right? And I think it was one of the staff recruiting processes was one of the first ones that we sort of did this with. And what we came up with was an idea, and this is part of the structure. Now, before ITS does any kind of workflow type automation, computerizing the process, automating the process, we say you first have to go through a Kaizen event. Okay? And it's interesting, it's done a couple things. Certainly there's more of that sort of automation, computerization than anybody can handle or any one department can handle. So they got the 2 year, I'm going to say 2 year long wait list. I don't know what it really is, but that's on the video. But this horrendously long wait list of people waiting for this kind of service. And we're saying, okay, in order to get in the list, you got to go through this Kaizen event, right? And it really starts to talk to people about how serious that is. So adding that sort of structure, Teresa's job title, I'm not sure whether it actually has lean in it, but she's essentially the lean manager for ITS, also works on managing their project flow. And we're looking at our administration and finance division is also looking at creating a lean position and a staff of some kind. Because the other thing that we don't have and that we need, I do a reasonable job of getting these Kaizen events and getting people kicked off. I don't do a very good job in my professor position of doing the follow-up, right? The 3 month, 6 month, the 9 month, the 1 year later, hey, are you guys still doing what we talked about? Did you make those changes? So we need some function at the university level to take care of that. And the other thing we do is we're doing, putting some training pieces in. The Lean Six Sigma green belt and black belt things are some things that we're also putting in place so people have access to that. This is learning. So we want to make sure that we're learning, and we've got people that have been in multiple Kaizen events. I'm trying to develop additional people to run these things. This is Lori Cerna, the person sort of talking there. She's actually talking to the operations manager at Hancock College and trying to explain to them some of the idiosyncrasies of the swim lane diagram. Lori's kind of I guess a serial Kaizener for us. She's in about 4 of our 21 Kaizens. And now I'm pressing her, Lori, when are you going to run your own, right? But it's okay, because the other sort of side benefit of this thing, it's not just the things that the things Kaizen events Lori has been in have not always been directly involved with what she does. She's now the payroll manager at Cal Poly, but she's taken those same ideas and apply them into her workspace and with the people that she works with. And it's a really good story of sort of people development. You got to celebrate. I didn't have a good celebration picture. One of the things you should always do is take pictures, take movies. Like I said, I saw my little lean movie there. But this was from our special events Kaizen. We did a 4-hour Kaizen. That's Stan Nostick standing there, our new VP of AFD, Administration and Finance Division. Karen Webb is sitting there at the table. One of the things when I put together that movie and over the last 5 years, I'm saying, wow, all these people that I had no idea who they were, right? Because I'm a faculty member. I don't know, like these people on the administration. I see them maybe, walking through the cafeteria. God forbid I should talk to one of them once in a while. But we have all these people in the Kaizen event, and those people have over the last 5 years have sort of moved up the organization. And I got some people that sort of early on, I'm looking at these pictures, wow, those are some important people now in places of influence that can actually maybe do something. And, do they remember that Kaizen event they were in 2 or 3 years ago? Do they, sort of fundamentally understand, what lean is and what it can do? No, but there's a little ember there. We can sort of fan the flame. Remember how good that was? Remember how that worked? Maybe we can get those people doing. But, celebrating is important. I know we did the employee intake process. We did a follow-up event where all the employees were given a little Starbucks gift card, the people that participated. That was sort of really a nice thing to do. So make sure you celebrate those successes. And that's part of the process at Cal Poly. So that's sort of our story. Those are some of the things that we've done, some of the things that we've participated in. And now I guess I want to sort of change up a little bit and think about, well, what is it that you guys can do, right? Like I said, when I started out, I'm scratching my head as well, what can I do to make my world a little bit better? And, I could do a lean training sort of exercise and maybe you'd get it, or I could sort of bore you with some more lean slides. But I wanted to maybe sort of bring it back into your home turf a little bit and talk about what you can do. Now, I've got another little video, which really is a TED Talk video, but I think it'll help the next part of our conversation here. There we go.
So ladies and gentlemen, at TED we talk a lot about leadership and how to make a movement. So let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons from it. First, of course you know, a leader needs the guts to stand out and be ridiculed. But what he's doing is so easy to follow. So here's his first follower with a crucial role. He's going to show everyone else how to follow. Now notice that the leader embraces him as an equal. So now it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Now there he is calling to his friends. Now if you notice that the first follower is actually an underestimated form of leadership in itself. It takes guts to stand out like that. The first follower is what transforms a lone nut into a leader. And here comes a second follower. Now it's not a lone nut, it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd, and a crowd is news. So a movement must be public. It's important to show not just the leader, but the followers, because you find that new followers emulate the followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, and immediately after, 3 more people. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point. Now we've got a movement. So, notice that as more people join in, it's less risky. So those that were sitting on the fence before now have no reason not to. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, but they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. So, over the next minute, you'll see all of the those that prefer to stick with the crowd, because eventually they would be ridiculed for not joining in. And that's how you make a movement. But let's recap some lessons from this. So first, if you are the type, like the shirtless dancing guy, that is standing alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals. So it's clearly about the movement, not you. Okay, but we might have missed the real lesson here. The biggest lesson, if you noticed, did you catch it? Is that leadership is over-glorified. That yes, it was the shirtless guy was first, and he'll get all the credit, but it was really the first follower that transformed the lone nut into a leader. So as we're told that we should all be leaders, that would be really ineffective. If you really care about starting a movement, have the courage to follow and show others how to follow. And when you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first one to stand up and join in. And what a perfect place to do that at TED. Thanks.
So I invite guest speakers to talk about lean to my classes. I actually do, for my Greenbelt class, I do a flipped classroom sort of thing. So the students are accessing all their content knowledge and whatnot online. And then I have guest speakers who are actually practicing in industry and whatnot come and talk. And I saw one of my presenters presented this little video, and I said, wow, I'm stealing that. Because that's what lean people do, right? We're big sort of sharers and stealers. But thinking about like what you can do, I don't really have a idea or aspiration that you guys are going to immediately go out and start trying to run Kaizen events. That was a particular set of circumstances. I had some skills and the timing was right, and I got the phone call and things sort of happened. You can potentially sort of make that happen, but it was relatively easy for us to get started down that path. And I thought it'd be good from a change standpoint to give you some easy ways maybe to get started on this lean journey. And one way to do that is to, maybe, I think Dr. Massey was talking about change the conversations. Let's just change the conversations. So I've got this little thing of speaking of getting better. And I just want to picture yourself as you look through these slides as this kind of thing that you hear in your organization, right? So you might see somebody say, she's very valuable in her job. She's the only one that knows how to do that. And you're sort of patting yourself on the back. I got this great employee. Well, maybe a little bit, better conversation to have might be something like this. If everybody were cross-trained, we could respond to workload changes much faster. I think it's a very rare job that you couldn't break that job down or what that person does into individual sort of pieces. I might be able to sort of recreate that whole person, but I can redo the pieces. Anybody see the movie Moneyball, right, with Brad Pitt, right? And they say, well, we can't replace a Gianji. There's no replacing a Gianji who's a 300-plus hitter or whatnot. But we can get, these three players, who get on base the same amount of times and that combined, person. So that's a sort of another sort of lean idea, right? Like, can we get cross-trained, even if it's just sort of in pieces, and start down that path? So, one way to think about this idea, a conversation is this is the tragedy of the only, right? This is the tragedy of the only, and as our resources get squeezed, we get pushed more and more in that direction, but you got to fight it. You need to fight it. So here's another thing that you might hear about. So the problem is we're using an outdated manual process. We should computerize, right? So maybe the conversation, though, maybe should start out like this, and this is the ITS insight, right? Forcing people to do Kaizen events before they actually do this computerization piece. Maybe we should simplify the process before we just wind up automating the mess, okay? Maybe we should stop and think a little bit, okay? Another conversation you might hear, but the process on this key issue is important, but I don't want to, or progress is important, but I don't want to overstress my team. I'm a good manager. I'm going to protect my employees, right? Well, maybe, what we ought to do instead is we ought to maybe pick a number, pick a target. I'm always telling my folks in Kaizen events and my students, let's pick a target. We do a little simulation exercise, and the simulation exercise is called build as much as you can. And you put people in that sort of environment, and they might, you've taught them about lean for 20 hours or 50 hours or whatnot, and as soon as you say build as much as you can, they put their heads down and they're cranking away. They're trying to build it because they might not know, but they're going to show the professor that they can build a lot of stuff, right? Whereas if we just said, stop, wait a minute, can you build 20? I don't know. Well, let's just put this 20 up here on the wall and see if you can build 20. And they come out and they build 18. And we talk about, well, how come we couldn't build 20? Well, this, and this happened. Well, let's fix this and this and this. Once you have a target, you got the power to organize, to improve, right? So maybe we just start picking some targets, for our people. I hear this one all the time, right? We're not trying to protect the employees, we're trying to protect our customers, right? That other department that we're delivering to. No need to talk to the customer. I know what they want. I know what they want, right? Well, when did you talk to them? Oh, about 7 years ago, right? When I first got here, I asked them what they want, and I've been doing the same thing for 7 years. Has your customer changed? Has the market changed? Has the situation changed? Has anything changed? Oh yeah, lots, right? So maybe here's a way the conversation go. Maybe we should have talk to the customer and have a value conversation. What do we need? What's the value that we're trying to deliver? What's the hassle? Where are the pain points for you? What about what we do, doesn't feel so good or creates you to expend resources? What's the problem there? What are the quality issues? How good does this have to be? How many defects? That last bundle of 26, work orders we gave you, how many of those had mistakes on them? Right? How many of those do you have to send back to get more information or fixed? Can we improve that? Can we work together? Right? So that's part of having that value conversation. And even on delivery, do you want 20 at a time? Wouldn't it be better if we just gave you 5, and we'll bring some over at break time, some at lunchtime, or do you want them all at the end of the day, right, on your desk? Have those value conversations. So just do it the way we always have. I'm sure there's a good reason for it, right? Not challenging the rules, right? Not challenging that process that you inherited from 3 managers ago or 3 generations of employees ago, right? So here we go. Maybe we should challenge the reasoning behind this. Process develop organically over time and often lose their connection to customer value, right? Customer goes this way, right? My process goes this way, right? How can I bring those two things back together? This is talking about assuming intelligent design, right? I assume that this thing is intelligently designed. Probably not. I've participated in designing processes before I knew what I was doing. I would hate to think that those processes are going to go on in sort of perpetual motion mode, for years to come. So we need to stop and challenge those things. So this is sort of another related one. I don't know if in the UC and in the community colleges, if you guys deal with policies at all, right? Or if there's any things, I don't know who invented that, but so here's this policy. It must be adding customer value, right? Or must be important, right? Well, just because you have to do something doesn't necessarily mean it adds value. Now, I'm not saying, and I'm being on videotape here, I'm not saying going out and violate all these policies that are stacked up. You can get in a lot of trouble doing that. But we want to start questioning them and challenging them. I was real lucky when first dealing with Bob Koob, and we're starting to do these Kaizen events, and we knew about this sort of issue, right? So it's part of that no culture. It's like no, and then here's the policy that says we can't do that. And you generally ask, have you ever read the policy? No, I haven't, but somebody told somebody that, we can't do that. But, Bob Koob was also saying, hey, if you ever run into a policy that needs to be changed, tell me, we'll change it, right? If there's anything that's a policy, because he knew we were going for customer value, and ultimately that's what he wanted too. And then the policy becomes the obstacle, and we need to fix it. It's not always instantaneous, but we ought to be starting to work in that direction, right? So this is one of my current pet peeves. We should have everybody sign off on this. That way everybody will be in the loop. I'm trying to be a nice guy. I want them in the loop. I want their participation, and the university will be protected. Okay. Well, it turns out that getting those signatures can take a lot of time, and we should make sure that each person really adds value to the process, and it's not just rubber stamping up the hierarchy. And if you sort of think about this as, I've got this sign off on this document, and surprise, surprise, the hierarchy in our organization from, professor to department area to assistant dean to associate dean to provost to president, all those people just so happens on this important thing that we're doing, it just so happens to exactly match the hierarchy on our chart. Hallelujah, right? Were we so smart when we set up that hierarchy? How can that, so I look for, lean thinking, I'm looking for those sort of improbable sort of coincidences. And there's a coincidence when, all those people, seem to actually have some sort of role to play in this particular thing we're doing, and it's probably not really the case, right? And we should be asking those questions. So, the thing about the whole sign-off process is if a person has a sign-off line on a document, I guess three things can happen. It's appropriate, they should sign off, they should do due diligence and go ahead and sign that off. But more likely, two other things are also really likely to happen. One is the rubber stamp. They kind of look at it and said, oh, Joe signed this. Yeah, I know Joe, I'm signing this, right? So there's that sort of thing. It's a rubber stamp sort of process. The other thing, which is almost more detrimental and sort of gets into that culture of no thing, boy, I don't know why I'm signing this. There must be a reason. I'm going to create some reasons that are totally out of line with, maybe that customer delivery or that delivery of customer value, right? It's my job to protect the people of the state of California. I'm way down here on the signature thing, but I'm going to protect, the people of the state of California. I'm not just going to protect my area or my job. I'm going to project. I'm going to protect the whole university, right? I know we've got some university protectors out there. Maybe we need a few of them, but we got a lot more than we need at this point. So watch out for those sign-off processes. Here's the last one I'm going to share you. Speaking of getting better, I just want to do my job, right? People say, I just want to do my job, right? But really, the thing and the message that I think we want to take home is it's your job not only to do your job, but it's also part of your job to improve your job. And if we can get people thinking like that, I think we can be a lot more successful, right? And that's that getting those people involved in problem solving. So in closing, I'm going to commend you to go forth and think and speak a little bit more leanly. This is going to lay the foundation. Go ahead and start a conversation. And maybe if you have what it takes to be a lone nut, go out and be a lone nut. Or, if you want to be a first follower, you can go ahead and do that. So with that, I'm ready for a conversation. So, any questions?
At Cal Poly, are you putting any governance around the business process work? So I'm thinking, is there ownership of a process to ensure that when changes are made in one area, that the process is still delivering as it should be? And are you doing work on processes that are moving through areas that report up to different leaders at the top?
Yeah.
And how do you get to decisions if there isn't agreement?
No. I got that from Cal Poly. No, and that's a level of maturity that I would aspire to, because I understand that concept. You're really sort of talking about the value stream concept, right? And we really strongly believe that in Lean. We're not there yet, and I don't think we have that sort of understanding and visibility at our upper levels either. Okay, but it'd be a great place to be. Is anybody else sort of in that? Like, we've got people responsible for cross-silo processes that, we have that sort of ownership structure. That's a pretty mature lean concept. Right? Okay, Alexis.
I had the opportunity to go to the University of Washington to see what they had done around lean processes. And what was amazing to me was the transformation of the culture and the people. And for example, in the contract and grant accounting area, there was a gentleman that stood up. He could explain the process cradle to grave, and he was a 6-month employee that had barely passed his probation. And I think for those of us that work at UC, I think it takes 6 months to get somebody access to systems. It was just so impressive. Have you had any similar types of experiences at Cal Poly?
Yeah, and that's sort of like the thing I was trying to relate with Jana and payroll, right? And the fact that, she's our rocket scientist. She understands this and can sort of explain. I got to say, from the years that I've been doing this, I haven't made a boatload of money on this, as far as, consulting and, I think I'm getting travel on this big speaking engagement here. But that's the reward for me, seeing that kind of effect on people. It's inspirational. It's the reason I get up in the morning to work with people that are doing this sort of thing. It's an opportunity not only to provide better value and service, to reduce costs for the university, but it really improves the lives of people. People don't like working in inefficient processes that they don't understand. And and one thing I sort of look for when I do a lot of tours of companies that are ostensibly, well, we're lean or we're implementing lean, and I look for exactly that. When you walk up into the area, does the tour guide or the manager explain it to you, or do they grab one of those operators or assistants and come up and say, okay, been working here for 6 months, explain the whole process? What does it take to make that sort of thing happen? And there's a few things, yeah.
This kind of goes with both of their comments. When Peggy was talking about really the value stream, I find that it's most useful to have multiple departments in a process, because if you just have one department, you have too much baggage in the room. Right. Even if you just bring in one customer, you kind of need to have multiple ones. So do you work processes over multiple departments? Do you in the whole value stream, or do you focus just on what's happening in that siloed department?
Yeah, no, one of the criteria for doing a Kaizen event at Cal Poly is that it needs to go across, functional areas. And that's sort of the go for participation slide is, get everybody in the room, everybody that has knowledge and touches that process. We tend to, look for some representative, people. So if we've got 6 different colleges at Cal Poly within the university, and we won't invite people from all the 6 different colleges because it just gets all unmanageable. But we'll say, hey, College of, I'm going to go College of Business, send 2 people, to this Kaizen event. You'll be our representative, and we'll see how it flows through a college type thing. But yeah, we go for cross-functional as much as possible. Okay. And the conversations that go on, regardless as to whether you really solve a problem, coming out of that Kaizen event are just, they're also inspirational and amazing, right? These people from different areas that, where they've been sending emails back and forth for years, but never really sort of met, never really sat down and sort of talked about it. It's another great, dynamic that happens in these sorts of situations.
Okay, I think that's time, but we're going to have a reception afterwards. You can ask any questions after. Thank you, Eric, for presenting. It was great.